Do you think you know the origin of the Power Rangers? Think again. Yes, Power Rangers is an American adaptation of a Japanese series called Super Sentai. But here's the thing. Before Mighty Morphin premiered in 1992, there were already 15 full seasons of Super Sentai in Japan. Complete, bizarre, and packed with concepts that never made it to our screens. Strange transformations, unique themes, unbelievable powers, monsters that defy all logic, and a very Japanese sense of humor. All of that was simply ignored in the West. In this video, we're diving into all those forgotten seasons, revealing what they were really like and showing you things you never imagined about the universe that gave birth to the Power Rangers. Get ready to be surprised. And if you're a Tokusatsu fan, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. We've already hit 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. To give some context, let's start with the series that began it all. The original warriors of what would one day become the Power Rangers universe. Aired between 1975 and 1977, this first season had 84 episodes. In the humble beginnings of the saga, the concepts that would later become staples of future seasons were still being developed. For example, the team of heroes looked more like special agents or spies, very different from what we'd see later, where Rangers fought aliens, interdimensional monsters, or even threats from other eras. In this season, they battled an evil organization called the Black Cross Army, whose villains were all human. The foot soldiers wore generic costumes, and the equivalent of Monsters of the Week were actually captains or high-ranking members of the organization. In other words, things were much more normal, so to speak. The Rangers' weapons weren't lasers or futuristic tech, but everyday objects like a whip, a bow and arrow, or even a soccer ball, which they used to perform powerful passes that would ultimately defeat the enemy. As you probably know, one of the biggest differences in these early years, being the 1970s and with no solid formula yet, was the absence of Zords, Megazords, or power-ups. Still, these first Rangers already had their own custom motorcycles, along with both aerial and land vehicles. A fun fact, in Super Sentai, the Yellow Ranger was usually male, unlike in Power Rangers, where the Yellow Ranger was almost always female. The second series premiered in 1977, and it brought a lot of interesting changes compared to the first season. For instance, while the chosen heroes were originally people with extraordinary physical abilities, this time they were technologically modified to enhance their skills, making them practically cybernetic superhumans. They were recruited by an international organization to fight another major evil group of the time. On top of that, the villains were no longer just evil humans in armor. This season introduced more fantastical enemies like robots, and even aliens. Another big shift was the introduction of specific themes for the Rangers' costumes. In this case, they were inspired by playing cards, and the team's commander even called himself Joker. This was also the season where we saw the earliest version of the 6th Ranger concept. Although the team started with 4 members, a new hero called Big One later joined as the 5th. He typically appeared mid-season with a more advanced, though initially damaged suit than the others. This idea would be developed much further in future installments of the franchise. Another important step during this era was the beginning of a shared universe, with a notable crossover featuring the previous season's Rangers and even some Kamen Riders of the time. For those who don't know, Kamen Rider is another hugely popular Japanese superhero franchise. Interestingly, this early season wasn't considered very successful, but the franchise's fortunes quickly improved with the following entries. The third season premiered in 1979. For many fans, these early productions still feature some of the worst costumes in the entire history of the franchise, and this season definitely stands out among them, along with others we'd see later. This time, the theme was based on different countries of the world, with each Ranger representing a distinct nation in some way. Unlike the previous series, here the suits themselves granted the heroes all of their superhuman abilities. It was also in this season that a key element of the franchise made its debut, the appearance of giant monsters. Whenever the heroes were completely overwhelmed by these massive foes, they relied on the most advanced and powerful tool of their international organization. This was the very first Super Sentai series to feature a giant robot. While it couldn't exactly be called a Megazord since it didn't combine smaller machines from each member, it entered battle fully armed and ready to fight. For the very first robot in the franchise, its design was quite impressive. Another important note seen in this and many later seasons is that Super Sentai often felt more like an action movie than a kids' show. There were moments and references that today would hardly ever make it on screen, including the death of characters, even main team members, during battles. Fourth season aired in 1980, and this time the villains were aliens. For the first time, it was revealed that the Rangers' suits and powers had an extraterrestrial origin. The villains had destroyed the planet where these artifacts came from, and Earth was now their next target. A small, friendly talking dog, apparently an advanced robot, was sent along with the rings that chose the new heroes. This dog acted as the team's commander and mentor. The protagonists of this season were descendants of the alien race wiped out by the villains, since some survivors had escaped years earlier and settled on Earth. This made it the very first Super Sentai series where the heroes were part alien. Another major milestone was the introduction of another giant robot. Unlike the one before, this one had advanced transformation abilities, combining multiple parts to form a single robot, getting much closer to the concept that would later become standard across the franchise. The fifth season aired in 1981 and brought some very unique changes. For the first time, the team was made up of only 3 Rangers, all men. This season also introduced animal themes into the suits. Red represented an eagle, blue a shark, and yellow a panther, a concept that would be reused countless times in later series. Red was the confident leader and expert in aerial combat. Blue specialized in underwater operations. Yellow was the powerhouse, mastering brute strength and ground-based strategies. Another interesting detail is that this season had continuity with the previous one, as its main villainess returned, this time joining a new group of supervillains threatening the heroes. The story begins when Earth becomes the target of the Black Magma Empire, a technological force bent on conquering the planet through its mechanical army and monstrous generals. To fight this threat, the international defense organization known as Guardians of World Peace assembled a special team, the Sun Vulcan. Unlike previous seasons, these 3 heroes weren't just ordinary young people stumbling into heroism. They were highly trained professionals, military specialists prepared from the start to take on a global enemy. Another notable twist was that this season became the first to replace the team's leader mid-story. The original Red Ranger left, passing his mantle to another young man with an even more serious personality, shifting the group's dynamic. And finally, one of the main antagonists of this season, known as Führer Hell Saturn, bore a striking resemblance to Darth Vader. The 6th season aired in 1982 with a total of 50 episodes, and its theme revolved around ancient civilizations, both real and fictional, including ancient Egypt, pre-Columbian civilizations of Latin America, and Atlantis. The story focuses on the evil science empire Death Dark, which seeks to conquer the world from its stronghold, Deathtopia Castle, located in Germany. To fight this threat, Dr. Hideki Hongo, founder of the Future Science Laboratory, recruits 5 individuals with unique skills to form the Goggle-V team. Each member of the team has a gem embedded in their helmet, symbolizing different ancient civilizations. These gems grant them special powers, enabling the Goggle-V to battle against a wide array of monsters. This season also introduced, for the first time, a true Megazord, a giant robot formed by combining 3 vehicle-based machines into one larger robot, although only 3 of the team members actually piloted it. In 1983, the 7th season was released. By this point, it was clear that Super Sentai had become an annual production, reflecting both its growing popularity and the audience's demand for more frequent new series. This season carried a very particular theme, though it's difficult to define it under a single concept. The heroes shared a deep connection with nature, with dreams that revolved around protecting it and developing inventions that could help the environment. Each of them brought unique traits to the team. The Red Ranger was a martial arts master who dreamed of creating a pollution-free engine. The Black Ranger was a descendant of ninjas with a fascination for the universe. The Blue Ranger was a surfer who wanted to give humans the ability to breathe underwater. The Yellow Ranger was a botanist with a big heart who believed in a greener future. And the Pink Ranger was a scientist who wished to communicate with animals, though she carried an unusual fear of cats. An interesting element in this season was the introduction of a mysterious warrior known as the Dark Knight. His design closely resembled that of the Rangers, but unlike them, he was not entirely good nor entirely evil. Sometimes he aided the heroes, while at other times he fought against them, as well as the villains. This ambiguous figure added a new layer to the story, and the concept would occasionally resurface in later seasons of the franchise. The 8th season, released in 1984, blended themes of robotics, advanced science, and something called bioparticles, which were used to determine who was worthy of becoming a Ranger. This season was also historic for another reason. The Yellow Ranger was a girl for the very first time, giving the team 2 female members, but there were also losses. The death of the original Yellow Ranger remains one of the most impactful moments of the series, something rare for this kind of show, especially in a genre that often leaned toward lighter storytelling. Interestingly, this was the first season season that attempted to be adapted for an international audience. However, network executives, particularly in the United States, weren't convinced by the concept. Saban's early attempt to bring the franchise to the West was ultimately rejected. In this story, the main threat comes from the Neo-Empire Gear, led by the mad scientist Dr. Man. Having transformed himself into a cyborg in a desperate attempt to extend his life, he came to despise humanity and saw the bioparticles as both a source of power and a possible key to immortality. The ninth season aired in 1985 and introduced heroes inspired by mythological beasts such as the dragon, Pegasus, griffin, mermaid, and phoenix. Once again, the team included two female rangers, one wearing white with pink details and the other pink with white details. The story goes like this. Earth was facing an unprecedented threat, the Gozma Empire, a massive alien army that had already conquered countless planets across the universe. Now their sights were set on our world. To oppose them, Earth's military selected 5 elite young soldiers, but their transformation into heroes didn't come from military training alone. During an intense drill, they were bathed in the mysterious Earth Force, an ancient energy that granted each of them the power of a legendary creature. Their appearance reflected this grandeur, with helmets marked by mythological symbols and an advanced arsenal that combined Earth's ancient spirit with cutting-edge science. Their giant robot, Change Robo, became iconic, embodying the union of the 5 legendary forces into one colossal warrior. The 10th season, released in 1986, introduced a completely new twist. The entire team had been abducted by aliens as children, taken into space, and raised among experiments and harsh training. This unusual premise gave the series a more complex and dramatic tone, setting it apart from previous seasons. Years later, now adults, the heroes finally returned to Earth to defend it from yet another invading alien empire. But their reunion with their home planet wasn't simple. Although they were fighting for humanity, they no longer truly belonged to Earth. Each Flashman's body had adapted to the environment of their adopted planet, and that adaptation became a curse. The longer they remained on Earth, the more their bodies rejected it, causing pain and weakness that grew worse with time. For the first time in the franchise, a Sentai series showed its heroes fighting not only against external villains, but also against the looming threat of their own physical limits. One of the highlights of the season was Flash King, the robot formed by combining the team's individual ships, which became one of the most memorable mechas in the franchise's history. In 1987, Super Sentai debuted its 11th season, which brought a major shift in the franchise's formula. The villains no longer came from space, but from beneath the Earth itself, representing ancient civilizations and subterranean monsters. The team's central concept this time was aura, understood as an inner energy present in every human being, which could be unlocked through training, meditation, and discipline, granting the heroes their powers. The story introduced the Underground Empire Tube, a peaceful kingdom that had been corrupted by Zeba, a tyrant who transformed the civilization into an army bent on conquering the surface world. To stop them, Commander Sugata, a master of martial arts and mystical sciences, assembled 5 young warriors and trained them to awaken a hidden power, aura power, the invisible energy within, which would be the key to defeating the subterranean monsters. This season also marked a huge milestone for the franchise by finally presenting the first true Megazord. Each ranger had their own color-coded robot, and together these machines combined to form a single super robot, a defining feature that would become a staple of Super Sentai moving forward. In 1988, the 12th season revisited the animal theme, but in a broader way, extending not only to the suits but also to the Zords and other abilities. At first, the team was made up of only 3 members, the Red Leader, the Yellow Ranger, and the Blue Girl, marking the very first time a female protagonist wore that color. Later on, 2 more members joined the group, the Black Ranger and the Green Ranger, completing the main team. Another highlight of this season was the introduction of something completely new. Instead of just one giant robot formed by combining smaller ones, there were 2 giant robots that could not only combine individually, but also merge together into an even bigger, more impressive super robot. The story begins on an island that houses the Science Academy, an institution where young prodigies dedicate themselves to developing technology for the future. However, the plot takes a dark turn when other students, driven by ambition and envy, betray the academy by joining the evil organization known as Volt, which sought to dominate the planet through corrupted science. What set this season apart was the mature tone of its storytelling. The depth of characters, the exploration of themes such as ambition, betrayal, vengeance, and the search for redemption gave the series a unique atmosphere within the franchise. In 1989, Super Sentai entered its 13th season, this time with a car-based theme. However, it also incorporated mystical elements, like fairies, creating a very unusual contrast. After the dramatic and mature tone of the previous season, this new one brought a more youthful vibe, though without losing the weight of the threats. The story begins by revealing that, thousands of years ago, humans fought against the Boma, a race of demonic beings banished from Earth with the help of magical fairies. However, as humanity destroyed forests and polluted nature, the power of the fairies weakened, allowing the Boma to return and spread chaos. In a final act of hope, Ceylon, the last surviving fairy, seeks out 5 young people who symbolize the courage and spirit of the new generation, a group of high school students. This contrast between everyday school life and the grand scale of fighting ancient, almost mythological forces gave the series a special tone. Visually, Turbo Ranger leaned into car and speed-inspired designs, with helmets resembling headlights and automotive symbols. The team's main mecha, Turbo Robo, had a more robust and modern design for its time, emphasizing the theme of machines and movement. This season left its mark on the franchise by bringing the heroes even closer to young audiences, showing that any ordinary person could become extraordinary when faced with an impossible challenge. More than just warriors, they were students learning to grow up in the middle of a war against evil. In 1990, Super Sentai took another bold step with the franchise's 14th season. In this story, the protagonists are the children of a couple who lived on another planet. After being ambushed by monsters, their parents sacrificed themselves to save them, allowing the children to escape with the help of a robot. Once they arrive on Earth, the children grow up and become the new Ranger team. This was the very first season in which all the protagonists were siblings. On top of that, they were also teachers, each with expertise in their own field. More than just teammates or friends, the heroes shared deep family bonds, which amplified both their unity and their conflicts. While fighting weekly monsters and the forces of the Zone Empire, they also had to manage their roles as educators, teaching their students values like courage, friendship, and resilience. The story also introduced extraterrestrials and revealed that the siblings' parents were actually still alive, and that they were the ones who created the suits, the artifacts, and even the Megazords. Visually, this season aimed to modernize the uniforms, using clean lines and metallic details, while still keeping the colorful essence that defined the genre. Their robots, Five Robo and Max Magma, were colossal and gave the battles against alien machines and monsters a sense of grandeur. Although it didn't reach the same explosive success as some of the earlier seasons, it stood out for its creative choices. In 1991, the 15th season of Super Sentai was released, a season still regarded today as one of the most iconic and revolutionary of the entire franchise. With a bird theme, each warrior represented a different species, and the series stood out for its deeper characters and its willingness to explore dramatic and romantic themes. Because of its rich storytelling, Jetman is often compared to a soap opera that hooks viewers from start to finish, with reports saying that even housewives were more invested in the show than their own children. The story begins with the space program J Project, created to develop enhanced soldiers using the power of dimensional birds. The officer overseeing the project chose Ryu as the first candidate, transforming him into Red Hawk, the leader of the future warriors. However, an unexpected villain attack interrupted the experiment, scattering the other 4 bird essences across the planet. As a result, ordinary people, with no military training or preparation at all, ended up becoming the remaining Jetmen. This unusual team formation gave the season unprecedented dramatic weight. Unlike past teams, where the heroes usually shared some kind of bond, the Jetmen came from completely different origins, personalities, and worldviews. This led to constant internal conflict. Another striking aspect was the exploration of more human and complex emotions. Love triangles, painful losses, personal dilemmas, and even the deaths of key characters were portrayed with rare intensity for Tokusatsu productions at the time. Jetman showed that heroes weren't just flawless warriors, they were vulnerable people, full of doubts and weaknesses, which brought audiences even closer to their journey. From this point on, American producers began to realize the potential of Super Sentai series and regretted not approving the idea of adapting them earlier. That's when Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was born in the United States, adapting the 16th season of Super Sentai. For the Western audience, Saban Entertainment used the original Japanese action footage with suits and Zords, but created entirely new stories, characters, and dialogue for the American version. From then on, for many years, nearly every Super Sentai season would be adapted into Power Rangers, with only a few exceptions. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.